Welcome to Texans on Tap special 2024 schedule release episode. I'm Brandon Strange alongside Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. Follow Charlie on X at Palillo and read his work weekly on sportsmap.com. Follow Josh on X at Josh Jordan 975. Read his work daily on sportsmap.com. Be sure to show your support for the channel by hitting like on this video and make sure you're subscribed so you're along for the ride with us as we follow the Texans in 2024. Follow them as in react to the games and results, not follow them in a weird Fish or Grateful Dead sort of way. And if you're under the age of 40, those are bands. Charlie and Josh, 2024 schedule release is out, so we're reacting to it. Let's get right to it. Charlie, number one, let's lead with, I guess, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate the degree of difficulty of this schedule for the Texans for this season. I'll put it on the screen as we get started here. I guess rate the degree of difficulty here, and what stood out to you the most about this schedule for 2024?
Well, much more difficult schedule. On paper, of course, all these things can get torn to shreds once we get into the new season, but the slate of opponents and quarterbacks, much more difficult overall than 2023, a natural byproduct of being a division winner and playing a first place schedule as opposed to being pits of the earth and having a last place schedule. A hedge against the difficulty is that the AFC South doesn't have any superpowers in it. So none of your 6 division games do you look at and say, whoa, that would be a pretty notable upset if they were able to win that one on the road. One thing that jumped out to me, 5 of the last 7 seasons, the Texans had a 3-game stretch of home. You don't really call it a home stand because you always travel back home between games in the NFL. I was not a fan of having 3 consecutive games at home because they had to balance out. And while they never had 3 straight road games within those seasons, you were going to have 4 out of 5 on the road or 3 out of 4 on the road to get to your final total. Remember, this going into the 3rd season of the 17-game schedule. This year, the Texans have 9 road games to go with the 8 home games. 6 national TV games. America's new team. Yep. The Dallas Cowboys sponging off the Texans to get an additional primetime game on their schedules. Not Thanksgiving, but hey, Christmas Day against the Ravens. So it's a very showy schedule for the Texans. Now, of course, the challenge is playing up to it.
Yeah, for me, at 8 or 9 on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as difficulty for the Texans, is going to be tough. Charlie mentioned the 6 national TV games. I mean, this time last year, we were sitting at 0 national TV games for the Texans. So that last game didn't get flexed till the end of the year to prime time. So what a difference a year can make. I guess my big takeaways looking at it is they don't have a week off until week 14. Yeah. So that's going to be a long time playing every week and having to deal with injuries, nagging injuries, playing through that stuff. And then, of course, when the schedule gets really difficult against the Chiefs in week 16 on a Saturday, and then you have to turn around with 3 days rest and play the Ravens on a Wednesday on Christmas Day. I mean, boy, that's going to be tough. And then you also have the Dolphins mixed in there towards the end of the season as well. So I think that's what really jumps off the page to me is after the off week, you have the Dolphins, and then you got the Chiefs on a Saturday and 3 days rest against the Ravens. So I think you're going to have to make a lot of hay before you play those games. It's nice. You have the Titans in week 18. I don't think they're going to be that good. We'll see if they prove me wrong. So it's nice to have that one. But yeah, that's what jumped off the page to me is, boy, the Chiefs and Ravens games, that's going to be a tough hill to climb there with hardly any rest against 2 really physical and talented teams.
If point spreads were posted for all the games right now, and point spreads will be posted for all these games in due time because the more that's out there for the public to bet on, the more there is for the public to lose money to the house overall. At quick count, I have the Texans as favored in 10 of the 17 games. Actual opening lines did go up for the season opener. The Texans and Colts, that rings familiar. The Texans, 1.5 favorite on the road. C.J. Stroud, proven commodity. Anthony Richardson, who helped beat the Texans last year before his injuries ended his rookie season, but he's kind of going to be a rookie the second time around. The Texans won the division. They won at Indy to win the division. So the Texans a small favorite in the opener, and then the holiday games. The books want early action. So the Texans at home against the Ravens. I think we could call Baltimore the arch nemesis, coming off last season, ending with a blowout loss to the Ravens, and beginning and ending with blowout losses to the Ravens. Baltimore, actually a small favorite, 2.5 points at NRG Stadium Christmas Day, if you want to get your action in early. Of course, point spreads within the season will change according to how the teams are playing. But games where I think the Texans at this point in time would be underdogs at Green Bay, with a healthy Aaron Rodgers at the Jets. Remember, the Texans got destroyed with Stroud by Zach Wilson and the Jets last season. Elite defense. At the Cowboys, Texans would be an underdog. Regular season Cowboys, undefeated at home in the regular season last year. At Kansas City, and then a Baltimore game. Then there are a couple of swing games. Maybe the Lions would be about a pick 'em after Detroit reached the NFC Championship game, one of those primetime games. Miami, I'm guessing the Texans would actually be a small favorite over the Dolphins. But that's 10-5 in games where I think you'd say favorite, underdog. And if you put the two borderline games in the underdog column, that would be 10-7, which strikes me as a plausible number. It was good enough to win the division this past season. Maybe it would again this year. And as we've talked about a couple of prior on taps or ons tap, the Texans could be a better team, but not have a better record, foremost because of the schedule.
Josh, you mentioned the bye being in week 14, and then coming out of that insane schedule, that run of week 15 versus the Dolphins at Arrowhead in week 16, and then like really quick turnaround Christmas Day versus the Ravens. Charlie, could that run of 3 games right there be the equivalent of a playoff or the beginning of their playoff run? Because those 3 games, it looks to me, could weigh heavily on whether the Texans actually, I mean, depending on how everything's stacked up, but those could be very, very meaningful games against, non-division rivals.
Yeah, you really hope you have a playoff spot largely sewn up going into that stretch. You'll have 4 games left. So if you were, say, 9-4 there, you'd have a little cushion. They then finish at the Titans. Which way will the pendulum swing on Tennessee? Will Levis have a breakout second season? Is Tennessee playing for anything at the end of last year? Or maybe that's as close to a gimme game as you can get at that point in the schedule for the Texans. That will be a physical gauntlet. Of course, Miami with that high-flying offense, Tua Tagovailoa, and all those quick weapons. We'll get to see Stingley and Lassiter against Hill and Waddle and, I guess, Beckham. Baltimore, tough physical team. Lamar Jackson indoors on carpet Christmas Day. So that is quite a little 3-game gauntlet to run. So, if you can load up on those W's, like every other team in the league, you'd like to be in a solid spot once you get to mid-December, but it might take on more import for the Texans.
I like opening up week 1 at the Colts because, I mean, I don't love opening on the road, but I do love the idea that you're going to open up against the Colts. You're going to figure out like where you're at real quick, with at least within the division. Josh,
that one scares me a little bit. Like, that was one of the ones I pointed out, even though they're favored.
Yeah.
I don't want to play Anthony Richardson week 1. We saw what he did last year, and I want him to have an opportunity to get hurt before we have to play them. So
he could get hurt in that game.
He could be. He got dinged up against the Texans last year. I hear you. Shane Steichen is a hell of a play caller. He's really good at what he does. That one worries me a little bit. I kind of have that one as a loss for me. I still think they're going to win 9 or 10 games, but that Colts game on the road, I don't like it as much as something else. And I was kind of hoping for, just personally, I wanted kind of a big game week 1 to start the season for the Texans, like an opponent they don't typically play all the time. To me, I was just like, oh, here we go, the Colts again, just another division game. So just as a fan, I was hoping for, maybe Detroit or Buffalo or, something like that week 1, just a personal preference.
No division game is a house money game. But opening at Indianapolis, if you drop it, you're 0-1, you're 0-1 in the division. It was a road game, so you get to balance the books on that or try to later in the season. But if you can go in there and win it, that's a nice early leg up. And then you could be facing 2 rookie quarterbacks. Caleb Williams, Sunday Night Football Week 2, when the Bears visit NRG Stadium. And we'll see what the Vikings' timeline is with J.J. McCarthy. I wouldn't want him sitting around his whole rookie season after making a big trade up to acquire him. The Texans go to Minnesota in Week 3. That'll be the exchange of pass rushers bowl, right? Grenard throwing Blake Cashman on the Vikings defense. Daniil Hunter will be getting after the Vikes in that game. And then you finish, well, it's not the first quarter of the schedule anymore, 4 out of 17, the first 23.5% of the schedule. Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. Let's not call it a freebie, but the Texans certainly have had the better of the Jaguars through most years, really. And then Buffalo back-to-back in Week 5 before they get, which on paper might be the easiest game on their schedule going into the season, at the New England Patriots in Week 6.
Yeah, for me, when I look at the schedule, the Jets, Lions, and Cowboys, all 3 weeks in a row, Week 9, 10, and 11, Texans got to come away with a winner, at least one win out of those 3 games, because I kind of have them taking every game in the division except for one Colts game. I just think they're going to really beat up on their division. So if they can just steal one against either the Lions or the Jets or the Cowboys, also the Bills, Week 5, if they could somehow get that one, at least they're at home for that game. So that's kind of where I look at the schedule. I'm like, what can you do against these quality teams that aren't in your division? If you can just pick up a win or 2 here, go 500 or close to 500 in those games, Texans are going to be sitting pretty.
At Kansas City, the only possible cold weather game. Could be really cold weather at Kansas City, December 21st. But at Lambeau Field in October. Could be brisk, but it's not going to be brutal in Wisconsin in October. At the Jets, Halloween night.
That'll be
the
cool.
Freaks will be out at night in the stands for that one in New Jersey. They play at Jacksonville. I guess at Tennessee could be cold, but you don't anticipate brutal weather in Nashville. Though I guess a couple of Liberty Bowls have had some ice. But particularly that Lambeau game, better October 20th than December 20th.
I think all eyes are going to be on Monday Night Football in Week 11 for Texans at Cowboys. Been awesome if that was Cowboys at Texans, but we'll take what we can get. Guys, what do you think the implications of this game will be? Obviously, it'll be for in-state bragging rights, but what else do you think will be on the line here?
It's a little early for it to be a game that, all right, the Texans can clinch a playoff spot or bury the Cowboys. As the Cowboys season is already teetering unforeseeably. Ranking quarterback in Texas, for me already, it's C.J. Stroud, who has a playoff win from the most recently completed season. Granted, the Cowboys got to wait around a week while the Texans were winning that playoff game. The Texans have more playoff wins since they came into existence since the Cowboys do, dating back to 2002, actually going 5 years earlier than that. The Texans are never going to supplant the Cowboys as America's team or really as Texas's team, the Cowboys' heritage. But the Texans have a real chance this season to establish quite clearly that they are the ranking NFL team in the state of Texas. And if they go into Arlington and beat the Cowboys on a national stage and say advance their record to 8-3 and drop the Cowboys to 6-5 or something like that, all of football America will sure notice.
For sure. I think of Micah Parsons, him and CJ Stroud, they're good buddies. They're always talking mess back and forth to each other. So Micah's not going to want to hear it from CJ if he doesn't get to him and sack him or if CJ lights him up. So Micah's going to have something to prove in that game. CJ's going to have to get the ball out. Also in that game, let's hope Derek Stingley is still healthy by that point in the season, because CeeDee Lamb just went bananas last year, and the Texans don't have a corner like Stingley to keep him in check. He could really go off on the Texans secondary. They drafted Lassiter, and we'll see what the guys they brought in free agency can do, the Akutas of the world and all them. But that's going to be big. They're going to need Stingley, and the game before that against the Lions, they can really fling it too. So I think it's going to be fun for fans that care about this kind of stuff. They did release some of the unis they're going to be wearing. We heard a bunch about the H-Town unis.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to wear those against the Bills, and then the all red uniforms, they call it candy paint, I guess. They're going to wear those against the Lions. So for those that are into that kind of thing, that is out there.
Josh, I think I heard you say you have them at 9 or 10 wins on the schedule. So, Charlie, give me your win total, and then Josh, I'm going to have you pick one, 9 or 10. Go ahead, Charlie.
I'll go with the 10, but if forced to go a game or higher or lower, I'll go higher, provided CJ Stroud is healthy for at least 16 of the 17 games.
Yeah, I guess I'll lean towards 10 and have some positivity here. And I had that with them dropping that first Colts game, which is very winnable. They could easily win that game. That could swing the other way. And like I said, they're just going to have to not get smoked by the Jets, Lions, Cowboys, Bills. Like, they're going to have to get a win or two there. And I think they're perfectly capable of doing so. So I'll go with 10 wins.
You want to be pie in the sky.
17-0?
Well, pie in the sky, not insane.
Okay.
I'll be Lucy in the sky with diamonds high. They can be favored the first 6 games.
Yeah.
At Indy, they already are. They will be over the Bears. At Minnesota, I would lean the Texans, maybe a small favorite there. Home against the Jaguars. Home against the Bills, you see what kind of starts the teams to get off to. And then at New England, at Lambeau, Game 7, right? The Packers coming off a playoff season, a playoff win. Jordan Love really emerged the second half of last season. That's the first game on the schedule that looms as, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure the Texans right now would be an underdog in that game. Before that, I think it's setting a high bar to say anything less than 5-1 would be a disappointment, especially compared to where things were a year and 2 and 3 years ago right now. So the 6 national TV games, heady dreams for fans that are not flat out fantasy. And it's not a shame that we still have the better part of 4 months before we get to opening day, but it'll make the countdown that much more anticipated.
Yeah, they could go 5-1 out of the gate. That's, giving them a loss against Buffalo, which should be an intriguing game, right? Because you got Diggs going against his former team, and Josh Allen and Diggs, maybe they didn't have the best relationship in the world. So there's going to be some pride on the line in that game. So Josh Allen's he's going to want to come out and show something here against his former teammate.
Yeah, we've had let's see, we have 12 wins, 11 wins. I'm looking at the comments here as people are putting their predictions in. Cedric says he predicts the first 9 games they go 8-1. That'd be great. And I guess the difference is, last year they got off to a slow start, but the schedule was forgiving enough for them to be able to bounce back. We've talked about it here already, that this schedule, as backloaded as it is, they're going to really need to make the hay early on here. I'm going to go with 12 wins. Charlie, you said you could be pushed towards 11. Sounds like Josh, 10's a stretch for you, but you'll lean that direction. If we're being aggressive, I'll say 12. I believe in CJ Stroud and this team, and I'm going to hope for good health, and that's really what it's going to take. They're going to have to be healthy down the stretch. And what I encourage everybody else to do as we wrap up, I'm going to get final thoughts from Charlie and Josh here before we go. Do us a favor, click like on the video while you're here, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and just as importantly, give us your predictions down in the comments. Make sure you give us your predictions. Tell us what you think the Texans are going to do this year win-wise, and we'll tally that up for our next Texans on Tap podcast. Charlie, final thoughts.
If they can win one of the 2 games, which would you rather win, at Kansas City or 4 days later, Christmas Day against the Ravens?
If it's me, I think I'm probably partial to pleasing the hometown fans. So like Baltimore, be able to defeat them on Christmas is a nice Christmas gift. I don't expect to ever beat Mahomes in Arrowhead. So my thought is that's a much more forgivable loss, whereas beating the Ravens at home on Christmas would be awesome.
It would, to answer my own question, and then Josh, you can break the tie as it works out. I'll take at Kansas City because you'd be beating the two-time defending champs in their house. The Chiefs, until the Chargers or Broncos or Raiders proves otherwise, the Chiefs are going to rack up wins and win the AFC West again. So if you're aiming for the whole ball of wax as a Texans fan and you want the AFC playoffs to run through NRG Stadium, maybe beating the Chiefs and getting that tiebreaker can make the difference, whereas maybe you get more help. Baltimore, certainly less of a given with Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati in the AFC North. That there's some cannibalism within that division. I don't see the Ravens going 14-3, 15-2. The Chiefs, they kind of sleepwalked through the first half, 2/3 of last season. So point well made about 70,000 people having Merry Christmas by beating the Ravens. But beating the Chiefs, to me, would be ultra impressive. And then if you lose to the Ravens 4 days later, the physical turnaround, letdown, whatever you want to call it, I could live with that.
See, that's where I'm kind of with this, Charlie's. To go on the road, which will probably be cold weather, December 21st in Kansas City, to go win there in that climate, that would be impressive. And I'm with you, Charlie. It's like you can kind of excuse away if you lose to the Ravens with 3 days rest after you travel to go play the Chiefs on Christmas. So yeah, I think if I could have my pick there, I would want that Chiefs win.
Well, if they win both, watch out, because then you're really talking about something special. And I also don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. It's sports. Sports happens. So, I mean, we don't know, but obviously that would be all. I mean, it'd be the most Houston sports thing ever is to win one of those two games and then drop the finale to the Titans. But let's hope. And it seems that CJ Stroud and crew and D'Amico Ryans and this crew is they're good enough to outrun the old Houston curse in the same way that this iteration of the Astros have been able to outrun the Houston curse. So, guys, thanks everyone for jumping in. Charlie, thank you for making time. You were at the Astros game and slid over after the fact. So I appreciate that and appreciate Seth Martinez playing along and helping us secure the victory. So there wasn't anything untoward that happened while we were going live here. So thanks for everyone commenting. Make sure if you're not catching us live, make sure you're giving us your prediction in the comments. Like I said, we're going to tally up those totals and talk about them in a later podcast. For Josh, Charlie, appreciate it. Go Texans.